0400 hours, Coastal Defense Battery Alpha, Western Okinawa. The Pacific Ocean is a void of black ink under a moonless sky. Thick, salty mist rolls off the water, sticking to the reinforced concrete bunkers like sweat. Inside the command dugout, the hum of server cooling fans provides a monotonous, mechanical drone. Exhausted radar operators stare at green sweeping lines that reveal nothing but empty waves and static. The silence is heavy, broken only by the distant, rhythmic crash of surf against the jagged anti-landing obstacles lining the beach. The air smells of ozone and wet limestone. A single blip flickers on the primary long-range screen. The operator leans in, squinting. Then 10 blips appear. Then hundreds. The screen washes out in a clutter of contact signatures. The operator wipes the glass, but the ghost fleet remains. On the optical monitors, the horizon line begins to distort. Through the thermal feeds, the ocean temperature spikes across a 20-mile front. The cold sea boils with engine heat. The mist shreds apart as a wall of gray steel emerges from the gloom. The klaxon screams. The sound tears through the humid air, vibrating the teeth of every man in the bunker. Red strobe lights pulse violently against the gray walls. Sailors and Marines tumble from their cots, boots slamming onto metal grating. They grab assault rifles and helmets in a blur of chaotic motion. Officers shout orders that are instantly swallowed by the wailing siren and the sudden roar of incoming ordnance. The lead enemy destroyer fires. A flash of white light blinds the forward lookouts. The air cracks open. A massive naval shell slams into the observation post on the cliff edge. Concrete disintegrates. Dust and pulverized rocks spray into the command trench. Men are thrown against the bulkheads by the concussion, helmets ringing against the steel. The ground shudders violently, knocking equipment racks off the walls. More shells hammer the coastline. The beach explodes in geysers of sand and fire. The enemy armada presses forward, unconcerned by the shallow water. Landing ships drop their ramps while still churning through the surf. Tracers from the ship's close-in weapon systems cut red lines through the darkness, hunting for the American sensors. The battery commander grabs the field phone, dust coating his uniform. He grips the receiver and yells for immediate counter-battery fire. He authorizes the release of the hidden coastal defense missiles. Outside, camouflage nets are thrown back. Hydraulic whines pierce the din as the massive coastal guns spin on their turrets. The barrels elevate, locking onto the silhouettes dominating the horizon. The American artillery roars. Muzzle flashes light up the beach for miles, turning night into a strobing day. Heavy shells scream out to sea, smashing into the water and steel hulls. A fireball erupts on the deck of an enemy frigate. Metal twists and flies skyward. The shockwave ripples across the water, flattening the waves. The first salvo has been fired. The waiting is over. 0415 hours, anti-air sector Bravo overlooking the beachhead. The pre-dawn darkness is now choked with thick, oily smoke from the artillery exchange. Ash falls like gray snow on the missile casings. The air vibrates with a low-frequency hum that shakes the fillings in the soldiers' teeth. Searchlights sweep the low-hanging clouds, their beams refracting through the haze. Inside the firing pits, crews violently crank handles and check feeds. The atmosphere is electric, charged with the static of imminent saturation. The radar warning receivers shriek. The sound is not a pulse. It is a continuous, piercing wail. The low hum amplifies into a deafening buzz. The clouds above the ocean seem to move. Thousands of small red lights appear in the mist. It is not a formation, it is a swarm. Suicide drones blanket the sky, diving in erratic, programmed corkscrews. The rotary cannons engage. The electric motors spin up with a mechanical whine that rises to a scream. They open fire. The sound is a continuous tearing rip, like canvas being shredded by a giant hand. Tracers pour into the sky, forming a solid dome of red lead. Drones explode in mid-air. They disintegrate into balls of fire and plastic shards. Debris rains down on the defenders. Burning batteries and unexploded ordnance clatter against the concrete roofs. A drone slips through the curtain of fire. It dives steeply. It slams into the side of a radar dish. The explosion rips the antenna from its mount. Metal shears with a tortured screech. The dish tumbles down the cliff face, crashing onto the rocks below. Sparks shower the crew in the pit next to it. A soldier falls, clutching his face where a piece of fiberglass casing slashed his cheek. Behind the drones, the heavier threat arrives. Cruise missiles skim the wavetops, moving at supersonic speeds. They punch through the smoke wall. The heavy air defense batteries launch. Interceptor missiles roar out of their tubes, trailing white smoke. They meet the cruise missiles over the surf. The sky flashes white. The concussion creates a visible shockwave that flattens the ocean spray. One cruise missile evades the interceptors. It banks hard. aiming for the main generator complex. It impacts. The detonation is absolute. A fireball engulfs the sector. The ground heaves upward. Concrete slabs the size of cars are hurled into the air. The blast wave sweeps across the battery, knocking men off their feet. Lungs empty as the air pressure drops instantly. The sector commander pulls himself up from the dirt. He grabs the radio handset. He screams for the electronic warfare teams to flood the frequencies. He orders the surviving rotary cannons to switch to independent radar tracking. Technicians scramble over the rubble, bypassing severed cables to keep the guns fed. The jamming towers scream to life, pumping invisible energy into the swarm. Drones lose their lock. They tumble out of the sky, crashing harmlessly into the jungle canopy or the sea. The immediate buzzing fades, replaced by the crackling of fires. The generator complex is a crater. Black smoke pours into the sky, blotting out the stars completely. Medics run swiftly across the open ground, crouching low. They drag wounded men by their vests into the safety of the bunkers. The barrels of the rotary cannons glow cherry red, hissing as the cool night air touches the metal. The swarm is broken, but the ammunition counters are dangerously low. 0500 hours. The kill zone. Beach sector Charlie. The gray light of dawn struggles to penetrate the wall of black smoke hanging over the coastline. The tide is high, churning with debris and oil. The sand is already scarred by craters from the preliminary bombardment. In the bunkers overlooking the surf, American anti-tank teams lie prone against the cold concrete. They breathe shallowly to keep their optics from fogging. The roar of diesel engines drowns out the sound of the ocean. It grows louder, vibrating the ground like an approaching earthquake. The first wave hits the shallows. Massive boxy amphibious assault vehicles plow through the breaking waves. They emerge from the white foam, their tracks spinning violently to find purchase on the wet sand. Water cascades off their sloped armor. They push forward, engine exhausts belching black fumes. One vehicle crosses the low tide line. It triggers the pressure plate. The sand erupts. 1,000 pounds of high explosive detonates directly beneath the hull. The 30-ton vehicle is thrown into the air like a toy. It flips end over end. It crashes upside down into the surf with a bone-jarring slam. Water rushes into the crew compartment. Another vehicle swerves to avoid the crater. It hits a second mine. The explosion shears the track off. The drive wheel spins uselessly, screaming against the metal. The vehicle slews sideways, exposing its thin side armor to the beach. The U.S. platoon leader screams the command. The ambush is sprung. Rockets streak from the tree line. They fly low and fast. A missile impacts the lead transport. The shaped charge melts through the steel in a millisecond. Ammunition inside cooks off. The turret pops off, cartwheeling into the dunes. Fire jets out of the open hatches. Ramps drop on the surviving vehicles. Enemy infantry scramble out into the waist-deep water. They struggle against the current and the weight of their gear. Machine gun fire from the bunkers sweeps the waterline. It churns the water into a white froth. Bullets spark off the wet armor of the stranded transports. Soldiers dive underwater or crouch behind the burning wreckage of the lead vehicles. A second wave of amphibious armor pushes past the burning hulks. They crush the debris under their tracks. One driver panics. He accelerates blindly. He rams into the rear of a stalled vehicle. Metal crunches and screams. The impact throws men inside against the bulkheads. The stalled vehicle slides sideways, crushing two infantrymen trying to use it for cover. The water turns red. The defenders reload. Empty launch tubes clatter onto the bunker floors. Fresh rockets are slammed into place. The beach is a graveyard of burning steel and rising tide. But the enemy engines do not stop. More shapes emerge from the fog. They drive over their own dead to reach the seawall. 0545 hours, primary seawall defense line, sector Delta. The noise is a solid physical weight that presses against the chest. The rising sun is hidden behind a curtain of black oily smoke and gray concrete dust. The seawall, a 15-foot slab of reinforced steel and cement, is scarred by thousands of bullet impacts. American defenders crouch in the mud behind the parapets, changing magazines with slick, bloody hands. Spent brass casings pile up around their boots, jingling like coins. The air tastes of copper and burnt propellant. A grappling hook flies over the wall. It clangs against the metal railing. Then another. Then 20 more. Ropes tighten. The enemy infantry swarm up the vertical face like ants. They claw at the cracks in the concrete. American machine gunners lean over the edge. They fire straight down. The heavy rounds punch through helmets and body armor. Enemy soldiers release their grip. They fall backward, crashing onto the rocks and the bodies of the men below them. A grenade arcs over the wall. It lands in a machine gun nest. The gunner screams a warning. He dives. The grenade detonates. The blast shreds sandbags and throws the heavy weapon onto its side. Dust fills the trench. Through the smoke, the first enemy soldier vaults the parapet. He raises his assault rifle. A U.S. rifleman tackles him. They slam into the mud. They roll, grappling for a knife. The American drives his blade into the enemy's neck. Warm blood sprays across his visor. He shoves the body away. But the breach is open. More enemy troops pour over the top. They drop into the trench line, firing from the hip. The defensive line begins to buckle. The sheer mass of the assault pushes the defenders back. The shouting is frantic. The platoon commander watches from the secondary bunker. He sees the enemy filling the kill zone between the wall and the inner perimeter. He grips the firing device. He waits. The enemy surges forward, sensing victory. They pack tighter together, rushing the second line. The commander squeezes the trigger. The directional mines detonate. A row of 50 charges planted along the base of the seawall fires simultaneously. A wall of steel ball bearings blasts outward at supersonic speed. The sound is a single, deafening crack that splits the air. The front rank of the enemy force vaporizes. The steel balls shred Kevlar, flesh, and bone instantly. The wave of attackers stops as if hitting an invisible glass wall. Bodies are hurled backward, pinned against the concrete they just scaled. The smoke clears slightly. The trench is silent. Nothing moves in the kill zone. The ground is a carpet of shredded gear and stillness. The breach is sealed. The commander drops the detonator and racks the slide of his rifle. 0630 hours, southern perimeter main airfield. The sun is fully up, casting long, sharp shadows across the miles of flat concrete runways. The morning heat haze shimmers off the tarmac. The air is filled with the smell of aviation fuel and crushed limestone. The perimeter fence, a double layer of razor wire, lies flattened under the treads of the advancing column. The ground shakes rhythmically. The enemy armor breaks cover. 6 main battle tanks surge over the earth berms, their 125mm cannons stabilized and hunting. They accelerate onto the taxiway, tracks sparking against the concrete. They fan out in a wedge formation, engines roaring, pushing for the hangars. The lead tank fires. A high-explosive shell slams into the control tower. Glass and steel shower down onto the apron. The tower is engulfed in flames. Inside the reinforced aircraft shelters, the trap springs. Camouflage nets drop. American heavy battle tanks roar to life. Their turbine engines whine like jet aircraft. They lurch forward from the shadows, black exhaust pluming from their rear grills. They do not stop. They charge directly onto the open tarmac to meet the enemy wedge. The distance closes to under 500 yards. It is a knife fight with 70-ton monsters. The lead American tank fires. The main gun recoils violently. The discarding sabot round leaves the barrel at hypersonic speed. It crosses the gap instantly. It strikes the turret ring of the lead enemy tank. The impact sound is a sharp, cracking bell toll. Sparks shower 40 feet into the air. The penetrator punches through the steel. Inside the enemy tank, the ammunition ignites. The pressure builds in a microsecond. The turret blows off, cartwheeling through the air and crashing onto the runway. A pillar of fire erupts from the open hull. The enemy column returns fire. A dart strikes the sloped armor of the second American tank. The reactive armor tiles detonate. The explosion deflects the penetrator upward. It shears off the commander's heavy machine gun and antenna. The tank shudders under the impact but keeps moving. The driver pivots the chassis. The gunner lays the crosshairs on the attacker. He fires. The round smashes the enemy tank's drive sprocket. The track snaps. The tank slews violently to the right, sliding sideways into a fuel truck. The collision tears the tanker open. Jet fuel sprays over the hot engine deck. The wreckage vanishes in a massive orange fireball. The formation dissolves into a brawl. Tanks maneuver around burning debris, hunting for flank shots. A U.S. tank reverses behind a blast wall. An enemy shell smashes the concrete corner, showering the optics with dust. The American tank surges forward through the dust cloud. It fires into the exposed rear engine block of the passing enemy. The engine grills shatter. Black smoke pours out. The enemy tank grinds to a halt, its gun drooping. The remaining enemy armor pops smoke grenades. Thick white phosphorus clouds engulf the taxiway. They reverse, firing blindly into the haze. The American tanks hold their ground, thermal sights cutting through the smoke, waiting for a heat signature to emerge. The runway is littered with burning steel coffins. 7:15 hours, jungle ridgeline Razorback overlooking the Central Valley. The humidity is suffocating beneath the triple canopy rainforest. Sunlight splinters through the leaves in jagged shafts. Steam rises from the rotting vegetation on the forest floor. In camouflaged spider holes dug into the root systems, American infantrymen wait. Their uniforms are soaked dark with sweat and mud. The jungle is silent, save for the buzz of insects. Then, the water droplets on the fern leaves begin to shake. A low rhythmic thumping starts in the distance. It grows rapidly into a chest-vibrating roar that drowns out the insects. The tree line ahead erupts. A swarm of enemy attack helicopters rises vertically from the valley floor like a cloud of angry hornets. They nose down, gaining speed. The lead aircraft unleashes a salvo of unguided rockets. The projectiles scream into the ridgeline. The jungle explodes. Ancient mahogany trees shatter into toothpicks. Earth, wood, and shrapnel spray in every direction. The concussions knock the breath out of the defenders. Smoke hangs low in the branches, trapping the heat. A squad leader whistles sharply. Camouflage netting is thrown aside. Two soldiers raise heavy shoulder-fired missile launchers. They shoulder the tubes, aiming at the dark silhouettes moving above the treetops. The seeker heads growl as they lock onto the heat of the turbine engines. The soldiers pull the triggers. The missiles eject with a sharp pop, then the flight motors ignite. They streak upward on trails of white smoke, accelerating to Mach 2. The lead helicopter pilot spots the launch. He banks hard left, dumping flares. Magnesium decoys burn white-hot, drifting down toward the canopy. One missile chases a flare and detonates harmlessly in the air. The second missile ignores the decoys. It slams into the tail boom of the flanking helicopter. The explosion shears the tail rotor clean off. The aircraft loses all stability. It spins violently, the main rotor blades screaming as they struggle for lift. The helicopter gyrates wildly, falling out of the sky. It crashes through the canopy. The blades hack through thick branches like a lawnmower before the fuselage smashes into the jungle floor. Fuel tanks rupture. A pillar of greasy fire shoots up through the hole in the trees. The surviving helicopters react instantly. Their nose-mounted cannons swivel. They strafe the ridge. 30mm explosive rounds tear up the earth in a line, walking toward the missile teams. Mud and rock fly into the air. A soldier is thrown backward, his vest shredded by shrapnel. The squad leader grabs the radio, screaming coordinates for heavy machine gun support. The air reeks of burning aviation fuel and pulverized wood. The ridge is holding, but the jungle is burning around them. 800 hours, urban sector echo, outskirts of Naha. The city streets are canyons of gray dust and shattered glass. The morning sun cuts through holes in the skyscrapers, illuminating the floating particulate matter like gold dust. Silence hangs heavy over the intersection, broken only by the groaning of twisted steel rebar swaying in the wind. Inside the hollowed-out skeleton of a 10-story office building, American snipers lie prone on desks covered in drywall debris. They breathe slowly, their heart rates artificially lowered. Through their scopes, the street below is a grid of firing lanes and range markers. An enemy mechanized column rounds the corner. 6 armored personnel carriers roll slowly down the 4-lane avenue. Their tires crunch over the rubble of fallen masonry. Turrets sweep back and forth, the black eyes of the cannons searching the windows. They pass a burnt-out city bus. They enter the center of the intersection. The trap closes, the lead sniper fires. The heavy anti-material rifle bucks against his shoulder. The .50 caliber round crosses the distance in a heartbeat. It punches through the vision block of the lead APC driver. The bullet shatters the reinforced glass and continues into the cabin. The vehicle swerves violently to the left. It smashes into a storefront, bringing down the awning and a shower of brickwork. The column halts. The ambush erupts from the vertical flank. Rockets streak from third-floor windows on both sides of the street. A warhead slams into the thin top armor of the second carrier. The explosion blows the troop compartment door off its hinges. It flies across the street, embedding itself in a parked car. Black smoke billows instantly from the vehicle's interior. Enemy infantry spill out of the rear hatches, coughing and stumbling over the pavement. Machine gun fire opens up from the street level. American heavy weapons, concealed in the lobbies of the buildings, rake the street. Bullets spark off this pavement and tear into the exposed infantry. Soldiers dive behind the wheels of the burning carriers. They return fire blindly. Green tracers zipper up the sides of the buildings, shattering windows and chipping concrete. An enemy soldier raises a rocket launcher. He aims at the sniper's perch. He fires. The rocket enters the office window. The room detonates. Glass, furniture, and bodies are blown out into the void. They fall 10 stories, crashing onto the hood of the lead vehicle. The U.S. platoon sergeant on the ground floor triggers the command wire. A claymore mine strapped to a lamppost detonates. 700 steel balls sweep the sidewalk clean. The enemy squad huddled there collapses in a heap of shredded gear. The survivors retreat into the smoke, dragging their wounded by the webbing of their vests. The intersection burns, the black smoke rising to join the cloud over the harbor. 900 hours, rear echelon command trenches, Sector Zulu. The battle rages miles to the north, a constant rolling thunder against the horizon. Here, deep in the red clay earth, the air is stagnant and heavy with the smell of wet soil and stale coffee. Support staff move through the narrow, zigzagging corridors, carrying ammunition crates and radio batteries. The sky above the trench lip is a strip of pale blue, seemingly disconnected from the war. The hum of heavy transport aircraft passes high overhead, vibrating the timber supports. A shadow flickers across the trench floor, then another. A sentry looks up, shielding his eyes against the sun. He sees black shapes plummeting silently, black silk canopies flaring open at the last possible second. He opens his mouth to shout. Boots slam into the mud. The sentry raises his rifle. A suppressed shot coughs. The sentry jerks backward, his helmet spinning off into the dirt. Enemy special forces detach their chutes in fluid motions. They wear black tactical gear and faceless ballistic masks. They drop into the trench line like oil pouring into water. They move instantly, weapons raised. An American radio man rounds the corner. He freezes. The enemy point man fires 2 rounds into his chest. The American falls, crashing into a stack of supply boxes. The enemy squad moves with terrifying speed. They stack up on the command bunker door. A flashbang grenade is tossed inside. The bang is dull and thudding underground. The door is kicked open. Automatic fire rips through the confined space. Shouts are cut short by the rattle of submachine guns. A U.S. Marine corporal hears the gunfire. He grabs a pump-action shotgun. He steps into the main corridor. He sees the black uniforms advancing. He fires. The buckshot spreads, catching the lead enemy soldier in the neck and shoulder. The enemy spins, slamming against the trench wall, sliding down into the mud. The corporal pumps the action. The sound is loud and mechanical. He fires again. The second enemy soldier takes the hit on his armor plate. He stumbles back but stays on his feet. He raises his weapon. The 2 sides collide in the narrow mud lane. It is too close for shooting. They crash together. Knives flash in the gloom. A fist strikes a visor. The enemy soldier drives a knee into the corporal's stomach. The corporal gasps but swings the shotgun stock like a club. He smashes it into the enemy's face mask. The plastic cracks. The enemy collapses, twitching in the dirt. More Marines pour out of the dugouts, weapons ready. The trench turns into a chaotic tunnel fight. Bullets chew up the wooden wall supports. Dirt rains down on the combatants. Grenades explode around the corners, sending shockwaves through the earth. The surprise attack has turned into a bloody stalemate in the mud. 9:45 hours, reserve staging area Hammer, 5 miles inland. The valley floor vibrates with the idle rumble of 200 diesel engines. Blue exhaust haze hangs low over the tall grass, stinging the eyes. The heavy battle tanks are lined up in assault formation, their long barrels pointing toward the coast. Infantry fighting vehicles sit in the intervals, rear ramps closed, troops sealed inside the dark steel bellies. The air is electric, waiting for the signal. The distant boom of the invasion front is a constant, dull thudding against the chest. The radio net crackles with the execution code. The lead commander waves his hand forward. The engines roar in unison. The ground physically drops inches as the tracks dig in for traction. The massive steel wedge begins to move. It gathers speed, crushing saplings and tearing up the red earth. Miles behind them, the heavy artillery batteries receive their firing solution. The howitzers elevate. They fire. The ground jumps. The air rips open as shells the size of fire hydrants scream overhead. They sound like tearing silk sheets, passing over the advancing tanks. The creeping barrage slams into the enemy forward positions. It is a walking wall of fire and dirt. The first line of shells impacts 400 yards ahead of the American tanks. The earth erupts. Enemy foxholes are buried instantly. Trees shatter into splinters. The shockwaves overlap, creating a zone of absolute pressure that liquefies internal organs. The barrage lifts. It shifts 100 yards forward. Then it drops again. It marches toward the sea, churning the landscape into a lunar surface. The American armor bursts through the lingering smoke of their own artillery. They catch the enemy infantry in the open, dazed and deafened by the shelling. The tanks do not slow down. Their coaxial machine guns scream, spraying thousands of rounds into the cratered earth. Enemy soldiers try to rally. They fire rockets that glance harmlessly off the frontal armor of the charging beasts. A heavy tank runs directly over a hastily dug machine gun nest. The screams are cut short by the squeal of metal tracks grinding over rock and equipment. The tank pivots, its 60 tons crushing the position flat. The turret swings left. The main gun fires at point-blank range into an enemy armored vehicle trying to retreat. The vehicle disintegrates. The turret blows straight up, riding a column of fire before crashing back down into the burning wreck. The infantry fighting vehicles drop their ramps while still moving. U.S. infantry storm out, moving behind the cover of the tanks. They toss grenades into the surviving spider holes. They clear the trenches with short, controlled bursts of rifle fire. The counterattack is a hammer blow. The enemy line, stretched thin and hammered by artillery, snaps. The retreat begins. 10:30 hours, high-altitude sector, 30,000 feet directly above the beachhead. The air is thin and freezing at this altitude. The sky is a deep, bruising purple, fading to black at the zenith. Far below, the war is nothing but a smear of gray smoke and tiny flashes of light. 3 massive strategic bombers cruise in a V formation, their dark wings stretching across the horizon. Their jet engines emit a low, steady thrum that vibrates the airframe. Inside the belly of the lead aircraft, hydraulic pumps hiss. The bomb bay doors groan and yawn open, exposing the payload to the slipstream. The weapons systems officer toggles the release switch. The mechanical latches click open in a rapid staccato sequence. Gravity takes hold. Hundreds of 500-pound unguided bombs drop from the racks. They tumble momentarily before their fins catch the wind. They align into lethal columns, falling in silence through the cloud layer. They whistle as the air density increases, the sound growing from a whisper to a shrieking roar that tears the sky apart. On the beach below, the enemy logistical hub is a hive of activity. Cranes lift crates from landing ships, fuel trucks idle in rows. An officer looks up. He sees the clouds punching open. He sees the black rain falling. He does not run. There is nowhere to go. The earth convulses. The first stick of bombs impacts the waterline. The detonations are not individual. They merge into a single, rolling thunder. A wall of fire and soil travels inland at the speed of sound. It swallows the landing craft docked at the pier. Steel hulls buckle and fold like wet cardboard. Ships are lifted out of the water and slammed back down, their keels snapping with the sound of gunshots. The carpet bombing walks up the beach. It reaches the supply depot. The fuel bladders ignite. A mushroom cloud of oily flame punches through the smoke, rising 2,000 feet in seconds. The shockwave flattens the corrugated metal warehouses. Crates of ammunition cook off, adding white phosphorus sparks to the orange inferno. Trucks are flipped into the air, spinning in the blast wind before disintegration. The ground shakes violently for 10 miles in every direction. In the U.S. trenches, soldiers press their bodies against the dirt walls as dust rains down on their helmets. The seismic waves rattle their teeth. The roaring continues for 45 seconds of absolute destruction. The beachhead ceases to exist. It is churned into a moonscape of overlapping craters and burning debris. The last bomb falls. The echo rolls out to sea. The smoke column is massive, a solid pillar connecting the Earth to the stratosphere. The bombers bank slowly to the east, their bays empty, leaving behind a silence that rings in the ears. The enemy's supply line is not just cut, it has been erased. 1100 hours, the shoreline, Sector Alpha. The wind shifts. It pushes the wall of black smoke out toward the open ocean. The sun breaks through the haze, illuminating a coastline that looks like the surface of a dead planet. The sand is black, fused with oil and ash. The roar of combat has faded, replaced by the crackle of 1,000 small fires and the groaning of twisted metal cooling in the surf. The waves roll in, but they do not break white. They break gray and thick with debris. The enemy formation is broken. What remains of the armada turns away from the island. Damaged landing ships limp toward the horizon, listing heavily, trailing miles of leaking fuel. On the beach, the retreat is chaotic. Enemy soldiers wade chest-deep into the water, desperate to reach the last departing hovercrafts. They abandon their heavy packs. They drop their weapons into the salt water. A damaged enemy transport tries to reverse off a sandbar. Its engine coughs black smoke. The turbine whines, then dies with a grinding crunch. The ramp hangs open. The crew jumps into the sea, swimming toward the retreating fleet. The vessel is left behind, a steel tomb bobbing in the swell. On the cliffs above, the firing stops. American defenders emerge from their bunkers. They look like statues made of dust and dried blood. They walk slowly to the edge of the shattered seawall. They do not cheer, they do not celebrate, they simply stand and watch. A Marine leans against a twisted rebar rod. He removes his helmet. His hair is matted with sweat. He drops the helmet onto the concrete. It makes a hollow clunk. He reaches into a pocket and pulls out a crushed pack of cigarettes. He lights one, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He takes a drag and exhales a cloud of blue smoke that mixes with the black smog of the battlefield. Below, the tide begins to go out. It reveals the cost of the morning. Burning tanks sit half buried in the sand. The bodies of the fallen drift in the surf, bumping against the hull of a wrecked destroyer. A medic walks along the beach, checking for pulses among the debris. He stops, kneels, and shakes his head. He moves to the next shape in the sand. The radio in the command post crackles with the all-clear signal. The static clears for a moment. The battery commander picks up the handset. He looks out the slit viewport at the retreating ships disappearing into the fog. He keys the mic. He reports the status. Perimeter secure. The fortress remains. The ocean swallows the dead.